In this video, I'd like to share with you how to read stock market data charts and also complete some samples with you. Now, we haven't talked about these yet in class, but I'd like to start with an example to see if maybe you can interpret what's happening here in this chart. First, you might recognize that this chart actually has two components. This is a representation of how Ford Motor Company is performing in the stock market, and this is their daily prices shown in green. But we're also showing the volume or the number of shares of stock that are being sold here in blue. So both of these charts actually are working at the same time. Both of these charts represent some information at the same time. If we look at the bottom of this chart, we have dates listed. Now, this is May 1st, and of course, this would be May 2nd. Then this number 30 would represent April 30th, April 29th, and April 28th. What we would like to know first is which day had the greatest high price. So we're asking about which of these 5 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, had the greatest high price, highest value of the stock. Now, if your intuition says to look at the point where the green bar is the tallest or where it reaches highest on the graph, you'd be absolutely correct. So this is the day that had the highest value of stock at any point, and that happens to be May 2nd. And the second part of the question is which day had the least or the smallest low price? Well, here again, looking at the heights of these green bars, the least or the lowest low price happens to be right here, which is April 29. Now, if you'd like to know what value the shares of Ford stock were at that time, all you have to do is look at the scale on the right-hand side. These do represent the price in dollars per share. So the highest price was all the way up here, somewhere between $8.65 and $8.70. If I had to guess, I would call that about $8.68. And down here at the bottom, somewhere between $8.10 and $8.05. I would probably guess that's about $8.07 per share. Now, if you were a day trader and you were trying to time the market, and we discussed this last week, how this is a very difficult thing to do, ideally you would have bought right here at this low spot and then sold your stock right here at this point. If you had held that stock from its low point on Tuesday of April 29th and sold it at the high point on Friday, May 2nd, you could have made some money on that deal. However, knowing that that would be the behavior of the stock is very, very hard to predict, especially in the middle of trading days. Now, an interesting component of these stock data charts is that not only do we see the high and low points of every given day, but there are these little tags or little arms that reach off of each day's stock values. And those actually serve a very important purpose. These little arms represent how much the stock was worth per share at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. So if we look on the left-hand side, that's how much the stock was worth at the beginning of the day. This is how much the stock was worth at the end of the day. Now, in between, from when the stock market opened in the morning and when it closed in the evening, the stocks apparently have gone up and they've gone down, but they've gone up and down and they've ultimately settled at this particular number at the very end. With modern technology today, sales of stock don't occur just between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. It is possible for purchases and sales to be completed after the closing bell has rang, and this is what we call after hours trading. So this check your understanding question is now asking us between which 2 days did the after hours trading appear to have the biggest impact on the difference between the closing price of one day and the following day's opening price. In other words, if I look at the closing price of one day and then the opening of the other, which of these 2 days, or I'm sorry, which of these 5 days appeared to have the biggest jump in price between the ending of one day and the opening of another. Well, it looks like between Thursday and Friday there was a pretty big jump, and then also between Tuesday and Thursday there was an awfully big jump as well. At first glance, it might be kind of hard to tell which jump was larger between Thursday and Friday or between Tuesday and Wednesday. But I think between Tuesday and Wednesday appears to be the larger of the two differences. And if I were to read off of the scale over here on the right-hand side, that appears to be a 10-cent difference. So I'm going to say that between April 29th and 30th is where after-hours trading had the largest impact between the closing price of one day and the opening of another. Now, Ford is a rather large company, and we can see just how large it is by the number of shares of stock have been traded throughout the week. That's what this chart is showing us right here. On Monday, it appears that there were almost 180 million shares that were traded. And I'm saying that this is 180 because it's between 150 and 200, and it's a bit closer to the 200 mark. So I'm going to call that one 180 million. On Tuesday, it looks like there were about 75 million shares that were sold and traded. On Wednesday, the 30th, that number increased a little bit. I'm going to call that one about 80 million. And again, about 80 million on Thursday here as well. By Friday, it looks like there were almost 90 million shares or more that were bought and sold. And a quick check with the calculator shows that if I were to sum these 5 days together, it looks like about 505 million shares of Ford stock were bought and sold over this time frame. And if you consider that a share of stock is a part ownership in stock, then this would indicate that quite a large number of people have been exchanging their ownership for money in this particular company. So on this second page of notes, I'd like for you to answer the following questions about this single day chart. Now, I split it up into two pieces so that it would fit on our worksheet a little bit better. But remember, both of these charts typically go together with one another, and they're stacked over top of each other usually. The first question that I have over here on the right-hand side is, what was GE's opening price? Well, if I look at the company's stock market data chart here, this is GE for one single day. It's this leg, it's this arm over here that indicates what the stock price was when trading opened for the day. So it appears to me that that arm is setting between $32.8 and $32.9. So if I wanted to make an educated guess, I might call this $32 and maybe, I don't know, 86 cents. I'm calling it 86 because while it's between 80 and 90, it's a little bit more than halfway in between. So I'll call that 86 cents. Now, its closing price, on the other hand, is going to be represented by this blue line that I'm marking, this blue arm over here on the right-hand side. So it opened at this value, it closed at this value. From the start of trading to the end of trading that day, it looks like it lost some value here, and it landed right on this 32.7 line. So I'm going to record that as $32.70. Now, as with any stock market trading day, there are highs and lows with this particular stock. And at some point during the day, we don't know when it happened, but at some point the value of the stock did rise pretty high, and it reached this high point right here at the top of the chart. Now, it's a little bit hard to see with this green ink on top of the green bar, but this bar does reach to a height of about 33 point, I might call that 28. So I'm going to call that 33.28. But also in the same day, it did decrease in value too, and it fell all the way down to this low point of about $32.60. And here again, if you were a day trader and you were trying to time the market, your objective would have been to buy when the value of the stock was low and then sell it when the value of the stock was high. But unless you knew exactly when that was going to happen, it would be very difficult to make those purchases and sales at that time. Now, for the last question in this group, we're asking how many shares of GE were traded. And it looks like the bar here for this day is slightly above 30 on its way to 40. So I might call that 31. And if we look at our scale here, that's 31 million shares of GE were traded. To finish out this video and today's tasks, I'd like to look at this last set of examples and the series of problems that go with it. This is a stock market data chart for a week of information for the WPO stock. This is Washington Post. So what I'd like for you to do is look at the information that's presented to you here and try your best on answering numbers 2 through 7. Pause the video and try these problems on your own. In just a few moments, you can resume playback and check your answers with what I have. Okay, and here we go with some solutions. On what date did the stock close at a higher price than it opened? Well, remember, the left arm represents opening price and the right arm represents closing price, and the only day that that happened was on May 1st. Or for question number 3, what was the day's opening price on each of these following days, April 28th through May 2nd? For each of these questions, we're just simply looking at this left-hand arm. And it's important that you make your best estimate, or at least you're being careful in reading these numbers off of the scale on the right. So to me, it looks like on April 28th, the stock appeared to open at $690. On the 29th, it opened at $680. On the 30th, it opened at $667, then $651, and finally $660. And for number 4, what was the day's highest price on April 29th? Well, again, keep in mind that we're looking at the top, in this case, of the red graph. So the highest part of the bar throughout that day actually appeared to be at the very opening of trading. So it was at its highest value right at the start of the day, and it must have lost throughout the entire day. But it started at 680, and that also was the high price for that day on April 29th. The low price on May 1st, well, this is kind of interesting. The low price on May 1st was actually the start of trading as well. So again, it looks like the stock, instead of dropping all day, increased for most, if not all of the day. Actually, it couldn't have increased the whole time because it did end up closing a little bit lower than its peak value for the day. And what was the day's close price on May 2nd? Well, here on May 2nd, the closing price was somewhere between 650 and 655, and I estimated that it was a little bit closer to 55 than 50, so I called it $653. Now, for this very last question, you needed to have just a simple computation. Net change is simply equal to a stock's new price minus its old price. And if we were going to show that as a percentage change, then we would need to divide the subtracted values by the old price. So in this case, to read the stock's value from April 29th to April 30th, well, we had those two numbers recorded here already for us. So this is what I would call the new price, because that's the most current, and this is the old price because it's the previous price. The new price of $667 minus $680 shows that there was a loss of $13 for that day. That's what this number represents. And if we divide it by 680, how much it was prior, the old price, then we end up with a decimal of negative 0.0191. And the question asked us to display that as a percentage rounded to the tenths place. And so I'll say that there was a 1.9% loss in value between those 2 days. So I hope you learned a little bit about reading these stock data charts, stock market data charts, and I will be available to answer any questions that you may have over this work tomorrow in class. Thank you.